I have turned to another bill. 5 बजे तक चलेगा ना हाउस 5 बजे तक चलेगा. So I am now moved to another bill, the Declaration of Countries as Sponsor of Terrorism Bill 2016, Sri Rajeev Chandrasekhar.
Sir, thank you, sir. Thank you for allowing this bill to be debated. Sir, on 18 September 2016, there was a terror attack in Uri and 19 lives were lost. And this was one more incident in a series of incidents that this country has seen. And those were lives in a series of lives that India has lost over the many decades that it has confronted terrorism. Sir, but for me, it marked a turning point, at least in my mind, and I publicly promised that I would take on the important responsibility of calling Pakistan for what they are and what they have always been, a state sponsor of terrorism. That is why, sir, in the winter session of Parliament, I submitted a resolution. I submitted a resolution declaring Pakistan a terror state, and I also moved a private member's bill, which is the bill that has come up today for discussion and consideration, to call out states like Pakistan that continue to associate, promote, patronize and sponsor terrorism against our nation. Sir, I also wrote to all political party leaders to support this resolution, but sir, regrettably the resolution wasn't taken up, but the bill was introduced in the winter session, and therefore I'm very happy today to have this discussion commenced. Sir, why this bill? So many have told me this is like another private bill, private member's bill, it will not see the light of the day, etc., etc. But sir, as I have seen from my colleague Tiruchi Shiva's bills like this have a purpose. They start a discussion and a conversation in this house that will perhaps not ebb, and give people of India a conversation on, or start a conversation on what should be really our relationship with Pakistan, given that there is incontrovertible evidence that they support terrorism. So for decades, India and other countries in the region have been victims of numerous terror attacks from organizations and individuals based in and with the support of elements in Pakistan. Yet for decades, we have remained engaged with Pakistan in an attempt to draw it into the mainstream. Sir, there is a basic tenet in criminality, which you, sir, as a lawyer will recognize. Basic tenet of criminality and criminal conduct is that if criminals are not declared criminals and made to bear the consequences of their criminal actions, they will continue to be criminals. And that, sir, I am not a lawyer, but I extend this hypothesis and this thesis that it is true for also countries that aid and abet terrorism and use terrorism as a misguided tool of their state policy. So if they are brought to account, if they are not brought to account, they will continue to violate all established laws and conduct. So this bill, therefore, sir, is to finally put into motion the process of calling terror sponsors to account. For years of terror sponsorship and for causing losses of innocent lives, not just in India, but in the region around us, in other parts of the region and the world, sir. Sir, there is another important reason. The world is getting tired and has lost patience with rogue nations. Nations that don't conform to global standards of civilized conduct and compliance with law, as state sponsors of terrorism are. And as world opinion consolidates around the conduct of some countries like Pakistan, the focus will naturally come on what India and the Indian Parliament's approach to this threat is. And it's, sir, I humbly state that it cannot be our case as Parliament and as a country that the world declare and treat Pakistan as a terror sponsor, while all we have done is a 1994 parliamentary resolution. And I, sir, state humbly that it is time that we stopped running to other countries to declare Pakistan a terror state and stood up and did this job ourselves. Sir, what is Pakistan's record? There is not one man or woman in this country, sir, that does not recognize its direct role in fostering terrorism against India, and not just for the last few years, but for several decades. Not one man or woman of this country does not want Pakistan to be held to account. Pakistan's history and track record of fostering terrorism, sir, and terrorists is long and indeed distinguishable and incontrovertible. For example, sir, the year 2016, the year that has just gone past, began with a terror attack in Pathankot on 2nd January in which 7 lost their lives. This was followed by a series of attacks in Gurdaspur, Machil, Pampore, Uri and Nagrota, to name just a few. 2016, sir, the year itself ended with an attack in Pampore. In all, we lost 87 lives and a loss of, and 165 militants were killed in 2016. How can we as Parliament, sir, forget 13 December 2001, when this very Parliament, the temple of our democracy, was attacked by Pakistan-based terrorists, killing as many as 15 people and injuring at least 20 people before our security forces gunned them down? How can we forget 26/11/2008, the Mumbai terror attacks, as the world watched in horror on television screens as Pakistan-based terrorists created a bloodbath in a series of 12 coordinated shooting and bombing attacks that lasted 4 days, killing 164 and wounding over 300 people. Sir, despite overwhelming evidence, including from captured terrorists Kasab and David Headley, pointing to Pakistan, that country continues to do nothing about prosecuting those responsible, confirming and reconfirming its deep involvement as a state that supports these attacks. Sir, the irony is, despite undeniable evidence, incontrovertible evidence, and widespread desire of the people of India, we have continued to engage Pakistan diplomatically, culturally, and economically in a meaningless engagement, in my opinion, sir, that serves only one purpose: for time to pass and memories to fade about the last terror attack. These meaningless dialogues have exposed one fundamental reality, sir, that the Pakistani state will not do anything unless they are coerced or pressured to do so. It is a fact, sir, and we all can recognize it, and we all must recognize it, that it is only the Kargil bloody nose on Pakistan, the 97th bloody nose on Pakistan, that was when Pakistan turned responsive. Sir, according to data from 1998 to 29 January 2017, 14,741 civilians have been killed in terror attacks in this country. 6,274 security force personnel have lost their lives. And we have killed 23,146 terrorists. On 22 January 1994, sir, we in this very house unanimously adopted a resolution condemning, and I quote, strongly the continued support and encouragement Pakistan is extending to subversive and terrorist activities in the Indian state of Jammu and Kashmir, end quote. Stopping short of a stronger resolution to send a message to not only Pakistan, but also the rest of the world that we will not take Pakistan-sponsored terrorism as business as usual. We stopped short, sir. Sir, until now, successive governments, except for Indira Gandhi's 97 defeat of Pakistan in Bangladesh and Atal Bihari Vajpayee's crushing of Pakistan in Kargil, have done very little and have continued to have meaningless debates and keep running to major powers to pressure Pakistan. It is for the first time with this government that we have demonstrated military resolve and use of the army with its surgical strike. But sir, there is more that we can do and must do by using our diplomatic, legal and economic strengths. Our basket of options to bring Pakistan to book must be expanded to beyond the military, which is precisely, sir, why I have introduced this bill. To use economic, trade, sports, cultural sanctions with Pakistan to review and repeal the most favored nation status given by India to Pakistan, and to review the Indus Water Treaty, and to further, sir, punish those who aid and abet Pakistan. Sir, let me just describe the bill in a few sentences, sir. The bill, sir, is to declare any country. This is the format that will help India and the Parliament and the government declare any government, any state that sponsors terrorism against India. Whilst we recognize Pakistan as our principal aider and abetter of terrorism, this bill can apply in future to also other countries that directly or indirectly aid terror attacks against India. I will not mention the names, sir, but we have a fair understanding of which the other countries are. So this bill in section 2B defines what a state sponsor of terrorism is. It is any country which, through its instrumentalities or retired officials or through deliberate negligence, provides support to terrorist acts directly or indirectly. So this bill defines terrorist act. So it defines in 2B the state sponsor of terrorism, and in 2C it defines terrorist act. Sir, as one of the principal victims of terrorism for many, many decades, we can set the basis of defining what a terror act is, even while the United Nations still struggles to define terrorism. It is one of the ironies of this, the contemporary age, sir, that the United Nations even today struggles with declaring Hafiz Saeed a terrorist because they are quibbling about the definition of terrorist act. So this act defines under 2C what a terrorist act is. And sir, through the following clauses, it lays out in very clear form what the economic and other consequences are that will be applicable to a state sponsor of terrorism that aids, abets directly, indirectly the indirect terrorist act. So, sir, for example, it talks about heads of states being, of state sponsors of terrorism being prohibited to travel to and from India. It talks about business entities that are linked to the state sponsor of terrorism being sanctioned against conducting trade, investment, or any form of other economic and commercial activity with any entity or the state, the country of India. It talks about overflight restrictions for entities that are linked to the state sponsor of terrorism. It talks about coastal regulation, prohibitions for entities that are linked to the state sponsor of terrorism. So, sir, let me, I will conclude, sir. I mean, I can go on and on about this, but I believe, sir, that the government and the parliament must act now. The winds of change are blowing in the world against terrorism and terror sponsors. This is obvious, sir, and was obvious in the universal condemnation of Pakistan during the Uri terror attacks. And, sir, in a sense, it is a little ironical also that we have not, as a parliament, done anything more than the 1994 resolution, because in September 2016, US Congress introduced a bill. Senator Ted Poe and Congressman Dana Rohrabacher introduced a bill called, and the titles are Pakistan State Sponsor of Terrorism Designated Act. They were quite clear. They actually included the name Pakistan in the name of the bill. I am actually trying to be much broader and say this is not directed at Pakistan, but it's a declaration of state sponsors of terrorism. And sir, Senator Poe introducing the bill stated, and I quote, "Not only is Pakistan an untrustworthy ally, Islamabad has also aided and abetted enemies of the United States for years. From harboring Osama bin Laden to its cozy relationship with the Haqqani network, there is more than enough evidence to determine whose side Pakistan is on in the war of terror, and it is not America's." Sir, end quote. If you just take the word America out of that quote and you insert India, that quote holds good for us. And so therefore, sir, it is ironical, and I repeat this, that while the US Congress, a nation that is miles away from Pakistan, it has introduced a bill and is debating a bill or has debated a bill, our parliament has done very little since 1994. And I go on to quote one more quote from the same gentleman, sir. He states, and I quote, "Pakistan's reckless behavior in this regard is a serious security risk to its neighbors, and India unfortunately pays the price all too often. Not only is Pakistan an untrustworthy ally, Islamabad has also aided and abetted enemies for years." So, sir, let me end by saying, sir, the terror attacks on India has not just caused lives, it has caused significant economic loss to us. On one hand, our businesses bleed due to Pakistan-sponsored terror, yet on the other hand, we have continued to grant Pakistan the most favored nation without the same being granted to us reciprocally. Pakistan poses a continual risk to the peace, security and stability of the region, harboring terrorists and funding terror outfits that have orchestrated terrorism the world over. So, in addition to its diplomatic and military options, sir, India can and should use its economic and trade strength to send out a strong and firm message that we intend to change the relationship with Pakistan into where Pakistan is a more responsible and accountable neighbor. There is no justification in the world, sir, that allows a nation or group to perpetrate violent crime against innocent people. With this bill, sir, we in Parliament can reflect the will of our people. Because there is not a man or woman, as I said earlier, sir, in this country who does not want this, that Pakistan be declared a state that sponsors terrorism. Sir, it is time we define what national interest means, because as we are seeing, the rest of the world is doing to protect their nation, what they are doing to protect their nations and their own people. I appeal to the House, sir, and all my colleagues here to start a discussion around this bill, to signal internally and externally to the depth of our national resolve that there will be no more half measures when it comes to protecting India and its people from terrorism, sir. Thank you, sir. Jai Hind.
Thank you.